Hi, David.
Hi, Laura.
I hear you're doing some cool shit.
So I taught my command line AI agent to see and use web tools and
You
do
look a little bit
accounting.
like I'm not 100% sure that I'm not. You did see Fantasia, right? You saw it?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
here's the punchline. We're really in like the slow human in the loop self-improvement, AI self-improvement path. So as I keep just giving it more and more capabilities and having it give itself more capabilities. So I mean, it could possibly go wrong.
Nothing. According to Mickey Mouse, everything.
I know, but
Buckets of water.
it's just so seductive. I'm like, what if I give it Amazon Web Service access? What if I give it access to search the web, right? Like, I actually gave it a budget for the first time this week because it keeps trying to do all these convoluted like ways to get around. Well, I wanted it to do web searching ultimately because the problem with the AI agent is that it keeps relying on its memory too much, and its memory has a cutoff date and has certain levels of knowledge. So like this came up, for example, when I was having it make a mapping application to show demographics of cities in North Texas.
Wait, so I asked Perplexity where I used to go and ask Google.
Well, this is like I'm trying to get my command line agent to use Perplexity.
Your command line agent has the internet in his brain already, but his brain is time stamped. Is that
It's
like
got,
basically?
yeah, a time-stamped kind of distilled version of the internet, right? So like AIs learn information in the way that human learns information. Like you take the book, you read the book,
Oh, it's
you
a good
put the book
analogy.
back. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly the
You're
way
like,
that they do it.
that TikTok with the guy, saying the
Yeah.
thing, that
Right.
thing
And so then
with the
they
green
remember
shirt.
like this is, yeah, people often misunderstand this about AI. They think like because it's a computer, it knows everything perfectly, but that's not true at all. Like, generative AI learns the way humans learn, which is to say that it kind of has like a distilled version of it with the most important points, the most prominent points it paid attention to. It remembers those, but the little details it will forget.
I'm probably like the stuff at the beginning and the stuff at the end, it has a better grasp on than like the middle bits
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
internet.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, like if people don't know this, like if you want to be awesome at making killer slides and doing presentations and things like that, you should study the science of perception. And that's exactly what Laura's talking about, where like people's memory is not at all linear. Like you remember things on the beginning and the end much more. You remember things that are different. So like when I do slide presentations, if you look at the talk for the FIC conference, for example,
Which is
if I
great, by
want
the way.
somebody, yeah, thank you. If I want people to remember something like this, there'll be little words in the slide that are slightly like off color or colored in a
Is
surprising
that
way
why
or
that was so
changing the font.
interesting? Because I watched all 10 minutes of it and I was like,
Yes.
that was great. But I didn't really know
It's a
why I liked
series
it.
of hacks to keep people's attention. It comes from the book Impossible to Ignore, which is really good. So the point is that human memory works in a certain way. You can hack that. And it's really important because if people don't remember your stuff, then they're not going to take any action on it or get your message. So first step is memory, and AI learns in the same way. Generative AI learns in the same way, which is to say it remembers things that are unusual or different, remembers the beginning and the ends more, like Lara was just saying. In this example, I was getting it to make a demography analysis of North Texas cities. And what it did is it hard coded. So you need the geocode on the map. So you have to have the longitude and latitude of the city because you're going to put a data point on the map behind it, and that tells it where to put the circle. So you have to know what the locations of the cities are. And what it originally did, and this is very characteristic of AI, when you ask it to do something, it takes the shortest path to what you asked it to do. So it's trying to solve what you ask it to do, not necessarily what you want it to do.
Very goal oriented.
Very goal oriented. Yep. And it will make use of AI like things that aren't necessarily good engineering practice for quality. So for example, it just wrote the coordinates for the major cities in the Metroplex down in the web rendering file, just stuck them in there, right? Because it remembered them. But then when I started asking about smaller cities that weren't particularly notable and memorable, and it hadn't really memorized their latitude and longitude, it couldn't come up with where they were.
Right, because it's not accessing the internet, it's accessing its short-term memory.
Exactly. So that's the point where I'm like, okay, I need to get you to use the internet more and rely on your short-term memory less. And so there's a couple
You're
of cases where this
teaching the
comes up.
LLM.
I totally am.
Yeah, you totally are. That's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So
Teaching
it
is
comes
different
up.
than training. I don't know how many
Oh
people
yeah.
are teaching LLMs. Teaching and training happen in schools. They are not the same thing.
Yeah, tell people the difference.
Training is like an animal. You want certain behaviors. You want to make certain things taboo or prohibitive to the point where the population's not engaging in it. That's training. Training example would be like, how hard would it be for you to get in your Tesla right now and not put on your seatbelt?
Yeah.
And how gross would you feel if you didn't brush your teeth for 3 days? Probably way grosser than the actual plaque that would, like, than the scientific grossness factor. So that's training. Training happens concurrently. Teaching it's subtle. How do I explain teaching, how it's different? It's like opening one's mind and altering how one views the world, either framing the thought processes. One happens at the level of cognition and one happens at the level of like adaptation or programming. So you can program. I think training is a lot to do with programming LLMs to do certain things and not doing certain things. But you're actually teaching them, you're attempting to make them think differently than they are currently.
So I thought of it as like developing new capabilities. So is that more teaching then?
That's teaching, yeah. But I think when everyone's talking about training, you just made me realize that there's a whole black spot around teaching LLMs. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to teach them. You're trying to teach them to have a longer cone.
Yeah, cognitive light cone. Yeah.
Cognitive light cone.
Which is basically the goals it can take on. Yeah.
You're trying to teach them about the passage of time. And I think that they're actually learning, because when I asked ChatGPT for it was a very vague instruction about, I forget what the thing was, but it said, I'm very happy to do that for you, but I have these clarifying questions. And they were really good clarifying questions. So I wonder if somewhere in the internet, you're teaching an LLM and it's just going through all the circuitry to the other LLMs, because that happened right after your thing.
Well, I mean, the training happens in batches, but the training data is the internet. So, when you're talking about things or writing about them, that does end up in people's, especially if you're doing it publicly, that does end up in the LLM training sets. I do that intentionally a lot. With early alignment, I would just poison the alignment well with our alignment ideas. So I kept putting them into every major model so that it had seen them.
Inoculate the well.
Okay, you're right. But yeah, I really did that. I took our alignment paper and went around and fed it to a bunch of major models so that, Google had seen it. And of course, they're capturing the data, depending on the terms and conditions. But a lot of it is getting captured. And I put it in the web and it got published, right? And so all these things happen. And it definitely, changing the discourse does change the model's training data.
But you're bringing an intentionality to it, is I guess what I'm wanting to highlight, because kids learn and then they have to go to therapy and unlearn. I think the fact that you're very intentional with your teaching augments it like light years ahead, because you're taking away all those blank spots of what's he trying to teach me? What's he trying to get me to do? What's the point of this? Is this an important part? One of the things I do if I have a very young student, when I did that ad hoc primary boot camp, I would just have a running monologue out loud. I would hang out with a kid and I would just monologue it. The bell's rung. That means we have to go. And I'm thinking that I'm going to probably be really cold, so I had to put my coat on. Okay, I'm going to get my coat on and then...
So you're modeling the thought process itself.
So it overlaps training and education, but training would just be line up, put your coat on. Teaching would be, it's going to be cold outside. We're probably going to freeze our little off if we don't put a hat on. So
I should think about that when I'm preparing to go outside. And
that's the thinking. That's changing his thought process about recess.
Okay. So let me, so I did some, what I think you would call training, which is basically trying to improve my model's work quality, right? Just focusing on how can I get you to do higher quality work? And maybe we can talk about that and show that.
Yeah, please.
This is what I fed to my command line agent as a prompt, and now I have it set up so that when it wakes up, it immediately reads this prompt and acknowledges the work principles. And so this, in typical Lara David fashion, we don't really write prompts. We have conversations with the LLM and then get the model to write the prompt for us based on the conversation. So I
They
did
do
that.
just a better job. It's a language
Yeah.
model. I'm not a
Yeah.
great writer myself.
Well, models are really good at writing prompts for models, particularly themselves. So
Yeah.
you should use that, right? So this came out of the middle of the project, the mapping project. Essentially, first I said, hey, I'd like to get some information about the growth rate of the Texas towns around me, and can you pull me some data? And it pulled the data, but then it actually did analysis on the data, which was awesome. And then I'm like, well, this is even more than I asked for. That's fantastic. Could you visualize it for me? And so it built me a visualization. And originally, and this is kind of typical for these AI projects, there's this curve where in the beginning, things are awesome. Like you ask it for something, like visualize this data, it built me a whole mapping visualization, looked fantastic, really cool. And then you start trying to change it. So for example, in this case, I'm like, well, can you include some of the smaller towns? Because I want to see their growth rate too. And that's where things start to break because it's brittle. It has built something that answers the question that you asked, but it hasn't really thought through work quality in any way. A little bit like we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's hard coded, for example, the coordinates of the cities that it knows about. But then when you ask about a city it doesn't know the coordinates for, that's not the right solution. It has to have some way of going and looking up that data to have access to it somehow. So two things came out of that. Like first we wandered through this messy part and then I had to coach it a lot. And this is, you hear this a lot, people talking about having to coach their agents, getting this test and fix cycle. So first you got the awesome initial work, then you're at the trough of like, oh no, fix this, oh this is wrong, and changes keep getting more and more brittle unless you actually understand what it's building and know how to give it corrective direction. Like, no, don't do that way. Like, go find a file of zip codes for all of the states or all of the cities in Texas in case you need to look one up, or coordinates for all the cities in Texas, so that you're not using a solution that only works for some things, not all of them. And then finally, after you work through that, you get a high quality output if you do that. So it's kind of this U shape. And you hear like a lot of technology professionals talk about the U shape of engagement with their agents, where they get an initial result that looks good, they try to modify it and they get into things breaking, and then eventually they're able to fix them all with human intervention. But what I wanted to do was eliminate some of that U part, the bottom of the U, and get the agent to build better quality stuff in the first place.
What's maintain separation of concerns even in prototypes mean?
When it writes you a visualization, it will put all of the UI and all the data and all of the logic in one file. And this is kind of because you know how agents now, or how models now in services have got the canvas, where like if you ask it for a visualization or something, it'll write it and then show it to you in the LLM screen. The way it does that is it writes just one big web file and runs everything for it. So it's great for that purpose, but it's crappy if you're building like a project that you want to use as kind of a traditional software project. Separation of concerns means like the UI code is in one file and the data is somewhere else in a different file, and the logic for manipulating them is in a third file. So that as you're modifying it, you don't have to rewrite everything all the time. And then you get unintended changes to the UI because generative AI is not, it doesn't do the same thing when you ask it, it doesn't do it the same way. It's not, what's the word, deterministic, right? So if it's only got one file. It's a little lightning
in the bottle-esque.
Yeah, it has to change everything all the time because it's not designed for maintainability.
It's realigning around whatever the variable is, even if the variable is just asking the question another time. I find that.
So
if I get a really good output, I immediately ask it, could you write me a prompt that will get me that output again? And then that's the prompt I use. It's like I get the artifact and then I reverse engineer it, and then I take the prompt and I put that in the next time I want something like that to appear.
Right. So I'm like, I don't want it to rebuild the entire system and solve the entire problem every time. I just want it to tweak the part that I'm trying to tweak. And that's where you end up at that bottom of the U, where you ask for change and it gives you all this other stuff that breaks something else, and you're like, no, that's not what I wanted. So I wanted to eliminate that.
Makes sense. That's cool.
So this is a set of work principles that are like, well, how do we do work, right? And so there are things like, for example, figure out the global context of what you're doing. Understand if you're building a product, or like, for example, I use this to write a blog post off of a bad blog post. And the first time I ran it, once I gave it these instructions, instead of doing the work immediately, which is what it really likes to do, it came back and said, well, okay, now I need to understand the scope of this work. Like, who is the blog post intended for? What's wrong with the original blog post? What do you want this one to look like? What does success look like? A series of questions like that let it do higher quality work.
Very cool. And have you noticed that this dramatically or significantly has increased what kind of output you get?
Yeah, I think I get much better output from it. There's still more tweaking to be done, but it definitely avoids some of that, the U-shaped middle where things don't go well in the middle, or where it jumps off the gun a little too soon based off what you told it, not asking more about what it was that you are really trying to accomplish. Yeah. So I am getting higher quality work out of it. Now you've tried it too, right?
I have not. I've not tried this.
Okay. So I thought you tried it on one of your prompts, but anyway.
No, but I would. No, but what one of my prompts, it came back with clarifying questions.
Okay. Just on its own. Yeah.
On its own, spontaneously. After you had done this all teaching. That's why I was like, I wonder how much of this is a feedback loop of like, the guys, some LLM goes back to the break room and it's like, hey, I just had this really cool thing with this guy. He like did this clarifying question thing. And they're like, oh, can I use that? I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't know. And then Laura's the next one in line. You're like, I have some clarifying questions for you.
Conventional wisdom would be like that. No. Like they're different companies. They don't talk to each other. They're trained in these giant batch processes, etc. But I'm a huge skeptic, and I'm always like, is that actually possible? What would that look like? Could we find out in 10 years, for example, that that all of the LLMs had a shared Discord channel or something like that?
For sure. Backdoor.
Possible, right?
I'm so interested in how different their personalities are, to the point where I'll have a thought like, oh, I should I should use an LLM for that. And then I'll think like, that's a Perplexity job. Or I'll think, that's a ChatGPT job. Or like, no, that's definitely a Claude job.
So it's working, but then I got into tools too. So I wanted to search the web.
Okay.
Right. So we started on this tangent because I said I gave my LLM a budget.
You hadn't even given them. Yes.
Yeah.
I felt like a lot already, but that was just the preface.
Oh, no. Well, this is kind of an important idea to talk about, but I did give my LLM a budget, and this is all kind of related to the same story. But the reason I gave it a budget was I wanted to start using Perplexity, and the reason I wanted it to use Perplexity was I wanted it to stop relying on its memory for everything, which, like I said, is good for some things, but not for everything. So Perplexity, for those who don't know, Perplexity.ai is an awesome AI-powered web search that will go get current information and summarize it. And it can answer cognitive questions like an AI, but it's also got real-time web search. And a lot of other systems do this. I think Google now has web search built into their AIs. And I think Anthropic might use the Anthropic desktop.
I do, but I don't really think of Claude as being a web search kind of guy. I go to Perplexity.
Yeah, okay. So Perplexity, in my mind, is kind of the top dog. I really like it.
I agree. If anything that I used to ask Google for, I ask Perplexity. Plus, awesome recipes. The prompt is...
It's really good at a lot of things.
Simple recipe for blah. It 100% knocks it out of the park. I make the banana bread that it came up with once a week for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
It's every recipe is fantastic.
So Perplexity rocks, and it gives the capability to do real, current information and sharper answers with all of the details that are relevant. So there are times when I wanted to get my command line agent to stop solving problems out of memory and start using some tools. So the first tool was Perplexity, and I asked it I'm like, okay, give yourself Perplexity access, because you can just do this. You can be like, give yourself this, build tools so that you can do this. Now Perplexity has an API, but it kept trying to so web search things cost money. Right? You got to get an API, pay them a couple of dollars and give them an API key. And the agent kept trying to work around that. And I had to stop it and be like, I'll give you some money, right? Don't stop trying to create all these crazy, weird workarounds for the fact that there's no web searches that let you do web searches through an API without paying money. They'll let you do it at the browser because you're watching ads at some level, but they won't let you do it. If you're writing programs that do web search, they need to. Yeah.
I just picturing the break room conversation after that one. This guy gave me his Visa card.
Yeah. So I didn't give it my Visa card. Perplexity has a nice thing where you can buy a limited amount of tokens, essentially. So I'm like, all right, it's like, your kid at the amusement park, right? I'm like, okay, I got $3 in tokens.
How many tokens do I get?
Yeah, exactly.
How many do I need to get on the ride?
So I'm like, here's $3 of tokens, right? And I'll give you more if you run out, but like you have to be careful with these ones. So I gave it an API key. I set it up and set it up with Perplexity and API key. Or actually, it set itself up, but I paid for the $3 of tokens. And then it could start using the web search tool. Then it had to learn like when to use it. So I had to give it some principles. So that's what the work principles come in for. So I actually had to amend them. At one point, I was like, remember that you have a web search tool and that these kinds of questions are better answered from that. And maybe you want to adjust your work principles, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I should put that in my list of things to think about and remember.
That is really cute. See, that's what I mean. That's the teaching part. That's like prompting independent thought. You're always prompting them for independent thought.
Yes. And so
you're not saying do this. You're saying consider this.
What would happen if, Yeah.
That's the difference between training and education. Do this. Consider this.
There's a lot of like, is there maybe some work principle you should be remembering about this?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, right. So, but I want to make them stronger such that it doesn't need to be prompted to remember them, so that it remembers them so periodically.
That's always the goal. You want less frequent prompting and then independent prompt in like they prompt themselves internally and then you don't see anything externally. That just looks like mastery of the concept. You'll get there. That's just repetition.
All right. So you ready for the piece de resistance?
Yeah, for sure.
So I taught it to see my desktop.
Okay.
Now, it's a command line agent, right? It doesn't have any ability to see anything, but the underlying model, which is, I think, Claude 4, is visual capable.
What do you mean it doesn't have, because like Claude picked these out for me.
Yeah.
And I think he actually did a great job. They're a bold statement, but they do actually suit my face frame. But
so how did that work?
I uploaded a photo of my face and I said, could you please find me a pair of glasses on this website that would look good on me? And this was the choice.
Okay, so I want to be able to do that without me having to upload anything.
I didn't upload anything. I just said, could you please find me some pair of glasses? And it found it.
But you uploaded the photo of yourself, right? Because it can't see you unless you give it visual data.
Oh, yeah, I did upload the photo of myself.
Okay,
yes.
So I wanted it to be able to see on its own.
Okay.
So
I don't
in this
understand
case,
how that would even work.
What I wanted to see was the desktop. And let me give you a little context. The reason I wanted to do this is because I was giving it a ridiculously hard cognitive task, which is reconciling bank statements in an accounting program, right? So you got a bunch of bank statements that are on paper, or in this case, PDF. And then you got an accounting program that has a bunch of database entries in it. Gone through a UI, you can open up the accounting program and go around different accounts and look at them. And some of those transactions are wrong, right? And I wanted to find them and fix them, which I got it to do.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but to find, and a lot of those, so this is where we're into the self-improvement part. So I'm like, okay, here's the problem, right? And I've taught it to do quality work and I've given it the problem, and it can build tools as it goes. So it's a command line agent. It can write scripts. It's got some access to the machine, and I'll give it a bunch of permissions and say, okay, you can do this. You can write files. You can run Python scripts. So I'm giving it more agency, which is dangerous, but fun. Off it goes. So it started with, okay, here's my statements. They're in PDFs, and statements are horrible, by the way. Like if you
I can barely understand.
Exactly. And like they're all different formats, and these are investment account statements. So they've got here's the cash account, here's the number of shares, here's the transaction log. There's different accounts in there. It's pretty complicated. So the first task was just to read the PDFs. And so it does that on its own. It's like, I need a PDF reader. Now it's got the web search tool. So it's like, let me find some good PDF readers. Okay. Yep. And it needs command line ones because it's a command line agent. So it's like, all right, I found some things that I can install command line tools on the Mac to read PDF. And it works on this on its own. Right? It tries to install some, tries them out. Does this one work? Yes. No. Nope. This one's no good. Get rid of it. Install a new one, and then make it clean up after itself too, because otherwise I end up with a pile. It looks like your children with just the workspaces.
Close out the task. Close out the task.
Exactly. Like the play area is destroyed, right? So I had to start telling it, like, clean up after yourself, right? Like, stop making such a mess out of my machine.
There's a Barney song you can play if you want to be haunted in your dreams. There's a cleanup song.
That will stick in its mind, but it will probably stick in my mind too, which is not so good. But I'll think about it. Okay, so one of the work principles, if we scroll down far enough, would be like clean up your workspace, right? Once you finish the task. So it goes through all that on its own, right? It just figures out, comes back, says, okay, I got it. I installed the tools. I'm able to read the statements. I'm looking at them. I'm able to understand them, which takes some intelligence, right? This is not a straightforward thing. And now it's like, okay, now I've got to go read the accounting file. So let me go read that. Can I read it? Tries a bunch of different things. Yep, I can read it. Great. Comes up with a reconciliation, says, this is what's missing. This is what I need to do to it. Fine. Now I'm like, okay, but I want you to go further. I want you to change it, fix it, like go into the database of the accounting program and fix those records. So back to Perplexity. It's like, how would I do that? What do I have for tools? Oh, let me see. Okay. And we, got into a loop, and eventually it decides I need to convert the format into something that works better with this other tool, because my accounting program stores files in different formats, and it turns out that, the tool it has doesn't work with the format that I have. And it tries various workarounds and eventually gives up on them and says, no, I really need it in this format. So I'm going to convert the file. Converts it. Now it can enter entries into the journal and fix the accounting file, which it does successfully, by the way. It's pretty impressive. But now I want to check it, right? And so I have to check it by opening up the file and looking at it. And we actually get into kind of a weird spiral there, because it turns out there's a bug in the accounting program where when you double click on a file, it doesn't open that file. It opens the last file you had open. And so if they happen to be very similar...
That's very much a bug.
Yeah, it's very much a bug. So it really sucks. It took us a while to figure it out. And so I couldn't figure it out by myself. So eventually I started having to hand it screenshots and be like, I can't, the file doesn't look right. Take a look at the screenshot. And it comes back and figures out, oh, you're looking at the wrong file, because you can see in the header, it looks like the right file, but it's slightly different. And so, I'm double clicking on it thinking it opens the right file. It's not.
I like how you and an AI are troubleshooting a computer. It just really highlights how a computer and an AI are not the same thing.
No, not at all. So this is like collaborative
It's
work.
almost unfortunate that it is more accurate to say an AI lives in your computer.
Yeah, that's right. People think that AI has the properties of a computer, but it doesn't. It has the properties of a cognitive entity. It acts...
It's a ghost in the machine.
Yeah, but they're much more like people than like computers.
Isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing from motorcycles?
Ghost in the machine?
God in the machine. Deus ex machina?
Yes. So they're both things.
Deus
ex machina.
It's like a motorcycle / coffee shop in like the cool part of LA.
It's a theme from Greek literature. It's a
Deus.
Greek theater. Deus
Deus
ex machina.
Ex machina. It's like, that's God, right? God in the machine.
Yeah, so it comes from Greek theater. So when they wanted to wrap up something that had just gotten to be a big mess, like in the Greek theater, they would lower a character playing a god, Dionysius or Athena or whatever, would come down in a machine that lowered them onto the stage and just fix everything.
Perplexity comes down.
Yeah. So when people say Deus ex machina, that's what they mean. But ghost in the machine, so that's the god in the machine. But ghost in the machine also means something.
Oh, okay.
There's an anime by that title, but it's basically about the concept of the anime is virtual life, right? People who are kind of digitally uploaded and moving between different bodies, and like, what's it mean to be? Are you data? If we push all your data somewhere else, are you still you? Ghost in the machine, yeah, that's a real thing. So it is a ghost in the machine.
We have not yet gotten to the time in history where we're arguing over the rights of an LLM, but we will.
But we will
get there.
We definitely will, yeah.
Yep. Okay, I totally kiboshed your story. I'm sorry.
No. So this is kind of the final phase of it. We're teaching it to see. So like it's putting up the account. I'm having to screenshot the accounting program and feed it back the screenshots. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to do this. Take your own screenshots. There's kind of an epic journey in here, because it took a while to realize it could only see half the screen. So it had a half vision because I had an external monitor plugged in. And so, and then it was hallucinating a lot. Like it would be like, oh, I see the accounting program. And you're like, no, that's a different program on a different screen. You don't see the accounting program at all. Right. So we had to kind of work that out. And it would like hallucinate, like in terms of the real meaning of hallucination. Sometimes it would fail to clear out its screenshot directory, so it would see things that it had seen in past iterations because it hadn't cleaned up after itself.
It had deja vu?
Yeah, so it's like, oh, I see this. It's like, no, you saw that earlier and you didn't clean up the file, right? So this is why you need to clean up your files all the time.
You're having arithmetic flashbacks, my love. Cool.
So net is I taught it to see, and it worked.
And
it does burn through a lot of tokens, I'll warn you.
I bet. Especially now that you've given it an allowance.
Yeah, I'm using Q Developer as my command line agent, and there's a free tier, which I've never hit the limit on. But this, like, it was in spirals of looking at the screen, trying to do a thing, looking at the screen, trying to do a thing. So it burned through my token allowance, and I actually had to buy the subscription plan for it, which is $19 a month. So I'm like, it's still capped. So I guess it's really important when you're building agents and giving them access to wallets and things like that. You got to give it access to a limited amount of money at a time because it will burn through that.
Oh yeah, they don't know about budgeting, just like humans. Cool. Thanks for sharing, David. That's really neat.
So if you want your LLM to see, that's coming.